The biggest and most expensive gamble in horse racing history ended in heartbreak. Some stories don't begin at the finish line. They don't begin with victory or defeat. Some stories begin with a price tag. Florida, September 2006. The atmosphere inside the Fasig-Tipton auction wasn't loud. It was tense. Rows of wealthy owners, elite trainers, bloodstock agents, people who had spent decades around racehorses, people who almost never agreed on anything. Yet on this day, they all wanted the same horse.
Black and recent stakes winner, Forest Danger, Grade 1 winner of the Carter Handicap, Diplomat Lady, recent winner of the Hollywood.
Not because he had won a championship, not because he had broken records. He had never raced, not once. And yet, as he walked calmly into the auction ring, the room changed. Conversations stopped. Eyes followed every step. The auctioneer hadn't even started, but everyone already knew. This colt would be expensive. No one expected what came next. The bidding opened. One paddle went up, then another. Within seconds, the numbers were climbing faster than anyone expected. $1 million. Another bid. $2 million. 3. 5. The room grew quieter as the numbers became louder. Nobody wanted to blink, because every time the auctioneer looked around, another hand appeared. 8 million. 10 million. 12. 15. And then, silence. The hammer fell. $16 million. For just a moment, nobody moved. It wasn't just another sale. History had been made. The highest price ever paid for a thoroughbred sold at public auction. Newspapers rushed to print the story. Television crews wanted interviews. Horse racing had found its next superstar. Or so everyone hoped. But here's the strange part. Nobody had actually seen this horse race. Not even once. So, what convinced experienced owners to risk $16 million on an improving colt? Was it confidence? Greed? Or had they seen something the rest of the world couldn't? To answer that, we have to leave the auction ring and go back just a few days earlier. Because the story didn't begin it's $16 million. It began with a stopwatch. The colt wasn't famous because of his name. At the time, most people outside the racing world had never even heard of him. His reputation came from something much simpler. A single workout. In the thoroughbred industry, young horses offered at elite auctions are often asked to complete a short-timed run, known as a breeze. It lasts only a few seconds, but those few seconds can change everything. For buyers, it's a glimpse into the future. One chance to imagine what a horse might become. When this colt stepped onto the track, very few people expected anything unusual. Then, the stopwatch stopped. 9.8 seconds. 1 furlong. An astonishing time. Fast enough to send shockwaves through the auction. Almost overnight, the colt became the name everyone was talking about. Phone calls spread the news. Industry insiders whispered about him. Reporters started asking questions. Could this be the next great champion? The timing alone wasn't enough to justify $16 million. But combined with something else, it created the perfect storm. His pedigree. His sire was forestry, a stallion known for producing speed. His dam, magical masquerade, came from another respected bloodline. On paper, everything looked extraordinary. Elite genetics, exceptional athleticism, an unforgettable workout. It was almost impossible to design a more desirable young racehorse. And that is exactly why the bidding became so irrational. Because by the time he entered the auction ring, people weren't buying a horse anymore. They were buying a dream. And dreams are often far more expensive than reality. Dreams are strange. The moment they're sold, they become expectations. And expectations can become something much heavier. For the colt, life changed overnight. One day, he was simply another young thoroughbred learning to run. The next, he had become the most expensive racehorse ever sold at public auction. Every newspaper wanted a story. Every racing magazine wanted photographs.
On the inside, AP Denzi, corner tongue, ripping bam on the outside as they head towards the 4 furlong mark.
Every training session attracted attention. People didn't just want him to become good. They expected greatness. Before he had raced, before he had crossed a single finish line, the world had already decided who he was supposed to become. But horses don't understand headlines. They don't know what $16 million means. They don't care about auction records. They don't feel the pressure created by television cameras. They only know one thing: running. And soon, even that became difficult. Only a few weeks after the excitement faded, something unexpected happened. The Colts suffered a gluteal muscle injury during training. Not a career-ending injury, but serious enough to stop everything. Suddenly, the horse everyone wanted to see disappeared. No races, no headlines, no unforgettable debut. Only questions. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The racing world waited. Some wondered if the delay mattered. Others believed a horse this talented would simply return and prove everyone right. After all, great horses overcome setbacks, don't they? Eventually, the injury healed. Training resumed. Slowly, carefully. But something had changed. The excitement hadn't disappeared. It had grown. Because now, people had waited so long. That reality could never match their imagination. Finally, after months of anticipation, the day arrived. Belmont Park, September 15th, 2007.
Funky monkey and upbeat mood. Tis Me, Tis You is a bit slow in his stride, but runs up to take third, just inside of Lady Rosamond in fourth. Disco Dasco and Milo Shamrock, then Judy and
This wasn't just another maiden race. It felt like an event. Fans gathered. Journalists filled their notebooks. Photographers crowded near the paddock. Everyone wanted to witness the first chapter of a legendary career. There was another detail almost nobody remembers today. Despite the injury, despite never racing before, bettors still believed the Green Monkey started as the 2-5 favorite. Think about that. People weren't just expecting him to compete. They expected him to win. Convincingly, the gates opened. Thousands of eyes followed one horse. For the first few strides, everything looked fine. Then, something felt different. He wasn't exploding away from the field. He wasn't making the powerful move everyone had imagined. Instead, other horses began moving past him, one after another. The finish line came. The crowd looked toward the scoreboard, and for the first time, silence replaced certainty. The world's most expensive horse hadn't won. He finished third. Normally, a disappointing debut changes everything. However, hope is incredibly stubborn. Owners found reasons. He needed experience. He's still learning. The injury held him back. Even racing analysts weren't ready to give up. After all, this was still the horse with the remarkable pedigree, the unforgettable breeze, the $16 million price tag. Surely, one race couldn't erase all of that, could it? Sometimes, the hardest part isn't failing. It's convincing yourself that you haven't. After the debut, the Green Monkey returned to training. The owners stayed optimistic. The trainer stayed patient. Even the betting public hadn't completely lost faith. Because this story still had for that explosive acceleration, the one they'd imagined ever since the auction. It never came. And no excitement, just confusion. What had happened to the $16 million horse? Than the applause had ever been. There was still one final race, one final opportunity to justify the price, to silence the critics, to remind the world why $16 million had once seemed reasonable. If there was ever a moment for everything to change, this was it. The starting gates opened. The race unfolded. And then, it was over. No dramatic comeback. No breakthrough. No miracle. Just another disappointing finish. 3 races. No victories. 1 third-place finish. That was the entire racing career of the most expensive thoroughbred ever sold at public auction. It had lasted less than 4 months. It's tempting to stop the story here, to call it the biggest flop in horse racing history. After all, that's the headline. It's simple, it's dramatic, and it gets clicks. But reality is rarely that simple. Because if you look closely, the Green Monkey wasn't slow. He wasn't unhealthy for most of his career. He wasn't neglected. He received one of the best trainers in America, outstanding veterinary care, elite facilities, everything money could buy. And maybe that's exactly the point. Because horse racing has always refused to obey money. You can purchase the finest bloodlines, the finest trainer, the finest nutrition, the finest equipment. But there is one thing that has never been sold at any auction: the heart of a champion. There's a question that still follows this story today. How could so many experienced people be so wrong? These weren't beginners. They weren't gambling amateurs. The people bidding on this colt had spent decades around racehorses. They understood bloodlines. They studied conformation. They knew how champions were made. So, what did they miss? The answer might be uncomfortable, because they didn't buy certainty. They bought possibility. And somewhere along the way, those two became the same thing. Horse racing has a dangerous habit. Every few years, a horse comes along that seems too perfect to ignore. A flawless pedigree, an incredible physique, a breathtaking work enough people believed someone else would pay that much. There's another lesson hidden inside this story. Promise greatness. Not before the gates open. After his racing career ended, the Green Monkey was retired to stud. There was still hope that perhaps his offspring would achieve what he needed, or could. But that dream never truly came to life. He stood at stud for years, far away from the spotlight that had once followed his every step. The cameras disappeared. The headlines faded. The world's most expensive colt became just another horse. And in 2018, the Green Monkey died. Quietly. Without fanfare. Without crowds. Without the glory everyone had once imagined. Maybe history judged him too harshly. After all, the Green Monkey never chose his price. He never promised to become a champion. He never asked to carry $16 million on his back. That burden was placed there by people who mistook potential for certainty. The Green Monkey wasn't remembered for the races he ran. He was remembered for the expectations he could never escape. Because talent can be measured, speed can be timed, pedigrees can be studied, but greatness has never belonged to the highest bidder. Sometimes, the most expensive dreams leave behind the quietest endings. The Green Monkey, 2004 to 2018. Career record. Starts, 3. Wins, 0. Seconds, 0. Thirds, 1. Earnings, $10,440.